This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from all around the globe. Get a whole month free at Mubi.com/Karsten. Hey everyone, welcome back to the busiest month of my entire life, aka what I watched this month, May edition. I started the month with Beneath the Planet of the Apes for Monkey Mondays, of course. It's obviously not nearly as good as the original Planet of the Apes. In fact, it knows how good that movie is that it just basically rips it off, which honestly, it kind of got away with that, even if it feels like a passive viewing experience for the most part, which is a nice way of saying it was kind of boring. But I gotta give this thing credit. It does get super bizarre and expansive in the back half. It takes a while for it to get there, but it gets there. I can't take a lot of what happens as seriously as the original film. What happens is cool, but it's not as interesting or profound. But still, it's a decent time. Then I watched The Fall Guy. I already did a video on this one, but I enjoyed it. I wish it looked a bit better. It's a bit too muddy for my taste, but it's undeniably a silly time that put a smile on my face. That's all I kind of wanted out of this. Then I rewatched Challengers. I've talked about this quite a bit, and so has the internet, so I don't know if there's anything I really have to add at this point, but it feels good to have something this smart and fun and sexy doing this well. Glad we're all on the same page about this incredible movie. Then I watched Holy Motors. For years, people have been telling me that if I loved Annette, Leos Carax's last film, I would love this one a lot more. And I can see why. It's cleaner, more ambitious, and somehow even weirder than Annette. But never weird for the sake of being weird. In fact, some of it teeters on being just a bit pretentious in just how serious it takes itself. Which isn't a problem, it's just French, you know? But for as loose as this is, for as unconcerned as it is about answering anything for the audience, it never feels unfocused or random. Each role is so immaculately performed and executed, it shapeshifts so seamlessly throughout its runtime. I felt pretty much every emotion during this thing, which is probably Carax's goal, and for that, I gotta call it a banger. And I watched Ripley, yet another banger. Not a hot take, but this is arguably one of the best looking things Netflix has ever put out. Don't think there's a single shot that isn't lit or framed beautifully. I should mention this only solidified my love for Andrew Scott as an actor. I actually think his take on Ripley compared to Damon is a lot more psychotic. I think his colder approach really fits the character and miraculously held my attention across all 8 episodes. In general, I was way more riveted by this than I expected to be. That's like the main appeal, is just how engrossing it is. Rather than trying to juice up the narrative, which is totally fine, it leans into the cold and empty actions of the lead. All of the violence is played out so straightforward. It's not played up or dramatized in any particular way. It's just, it is what it is, which is a risky choice, but they really pull it off, and it makes this what it is. I cannot recommend this thing enough. I wish more people talked about it. Then I Saw the TV Glow. After World's Fair, Jane Schoenbrunn quickly became one of my favorite filmmakers working today. It only takes about a minute for you to be engulfed by their filmmaking. It's an immediately distinct and engrossing style, despite being pretty unpleasant a lot of the time. TV Glow is no exception. It's Jane with a budget, which is something I have mixed feelings on. On one hand, I do kind of miss the lo-fi style of World's Fair. It was the lo-fi-ness that really pulled me in and gave it such an unsettling quality. That's how internet stuff looks. But at the same time, with a budget, this is visually one of the most vibrant and flashy movies you'll see all year. No surprises there. The horrors of the film sneak up on you, like in World's Fair. They're really smart about how they deliver the scares. In this case, it's not until pretty much the end of the film that you realize how unsettling this entire thing is. That final scene really disturbed me. Nostalgia and attachment to media, whether it be videos on the internet, TV shows, movies, music artists, is such a new concept to a lot of people, and it's a feeling that's been pretty much impossible to communicate through film because of just how weird and specific it is, at least without being experimental about it, which is basically what World's Fair was. But that's where TV Glow really shines, by successfully translating this idea into a more popular format, the 90s teen high school movie. Jane kind of created something completely undefinable in the best way. It's for that reason that this feels like a milestone of a film, one that completely defines the era it came from and what came before it. It's a very special movie, and this is not the last time you'll hear me talk about it. I have not been able to stop thinking about this one. Then I watched War for the Planet of the Apes for Monkey Mondays, obviously, and this was kind of my least favorite of the new batch of films, despite the VFX being at their peak. I wish the story here was just a bit bigger. Limiting what is the climax of the trilogy to what is essentially a standard Prison Break film just felt very backwards and underwhelming to me. The action is great. Woody Harrelson is set up as a pretty interesting villain. The main crew of monkeys is pretty fun, but it sets all this up to just spin its wheels in one pretty uninteresting location. I don't know, just didn't do it for me personally, but I do love the ending. What a beautiful way to cap things off. Then I watched Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Already made a video on this one, but I enjoyed it. I was expecting it to be a pretty significant step down from the Caesar trilogy. I don't know why I was expecting that, but instead it ended up leaning into the world building in a way I've always wanted these movies to do. They never commit to it, and this really commits to it. I can't tell if it's a good thing now that I've seen it. In the process, you do get kind of a sleepy movie. I've talked to so many people in real life that said they were barely staying awake for some of this. I will admit I was one of those people, but I like its attention to the atmosphere. It's admirable, it's interesting. If they balance it a bit better in the next film, it could be a really special movie. Then I watched Ghostlight. This is a movie about a construction worker who secretly joins a theater group. It was directed by an old professor of mine, so there's a little bit of a soft spot there. And I found it really charming. It has a thick Midwestern tone that I was glad it leaned into rather than shied away from. It makes everything in the film feel just that much more authentic. The lighting is a beauty to look at in some of the theater scenes. I expected nothing less from a title like that. And as far as films about grief go, I do really appreciate how delicate this was about the subject. It's never over the top or sappy about the subject, which again makes it feel devastatingly real at times. Good movie, good tearjerker, give it a watch. Then I rewatched Lola. This has always been one of my favorite Demi films, and on a rewatch I can confirm it still goes very hard. No, it's not as clean or as whimsical as Umbrellas or Rochefort, but the sense of yearning is still very much present in this. I don't think anyone understands romance quite like this man. And on top of all that, the directing is still so playful, which is crazy to see for a directorial debut. He makes it look easy. Then I watched Evil Does Not Exist. Does this count as a 2024 release? I'm only asking because it's one of my favorite things I've seen this year, and I really want to put it in the list. This is the latest from Hamaguchi, a pretty stripped down film compared to his Oscar-winning Drive My Car, and I loved that about it. I think despite its simplicity, it's a rich, and I hate to use this word for like the fifth time in this video, but engrossing watch. It mesmerizes you with its tranquility for most of the runtime, only to disrupt its own flow with a very unexpected ending that may not work for some people, but really worked for me. I thought it made total sense for the film's themes of protection and environmentalism. This put me under a total spell, to put it simply. I thought it was an incredibly beautiful movie. Then I rewatched Fury Road not once, but twice. And yeah, it's great. What do you want me to say at this point, all right? It's somehow still great even after the 10th watch. I've talked about this fucking movie so much this month. I'm done. And I watched The Musician Monkey, and you can too. Watch this. There it is. That's the movie. Yeah, this is barely even a short film, but it's on Letterboxd, so it counts. I was jet lagged. This was the best I could do for Monkey Mondays this week. Then I went to Cannes and I watched the second act, Simon of the Mountain, Wild Diamond, Furiosa, Megalopolis, Bird, Kinds of Kindness, Christmas Eve in Miller's Point, Oh Canada, Rumors, The Balconettes, and The Substance. No, I didn't see Anora. Don't ask me about it. I'm still very sad. If you're looking for reviews for these films, go watch my official Cannes recap video that I just put out. Then I watched A Day at the Zoo. As someone who gets a kick out of corny puns, this was super my thing. Just basically a collection of dad jokes that take place at a zoo, and when you put it over some good animation, it's enough for me to get a real kick out of it. And I watched The Talented Mr. Ripley. After loving Ripley on Netflix, I figured it was time I finally got around to this one. And I have to say off the bat, Philip Seymour Hoffman is delivering quite possibly his greatest performance ever in this movie. I never expected that. Yes, he's been more dramatic and complex, but I don't think he's ever eaten up the screen the way he does here. This is what acting in film is all about. One-of-a-kind talent right there. As much as I prefer the Netflix Ripley, probably only because I watched that one first and that's just how brains work, I still got a kick out of this. I like that this is a bit looser and leans into the eroticism a bit more. I think this is a very sexy movie, to be honest. The Netflix Ripley does feel empty compared to this, and that's for a reason, but I did appreciate this as being a more in-depth critique on the wealthy. This isn't all to say that this doesn't do a good job at portraying Ripley as a sociopath. It's just a lot subtler. That said, I think it's one of Matt Damon's greatest performances too. I didn't know he had something like this in him. The last 10 minutes, I mean, good God. But yeah, really enjoyed this. On to Purple Noon. Then I watched Smoke Sauna Sisterhood. This is a documentary about a group of women who share their most personal secrets inside a sauna in the middle of the woods, and I thought it was a beautiful beautiful documentary. Watching people sweat and scrub themselves as they unpack traumatic and deeply personal events from their past should not be this nice to look at, but it is. For being limited to one very specific space, the cinematography is constantly showing you something new and capturing sweat, tears, sometimes both, in a really beautiful way. Very rarely do you see a film with the opportunity to focus this much on capturing human bodies, and the filmmakers take full advantage of that opportunity here and make you look at the human body in a way that you weren't entirely familiar with. The film, like the sauna, makes you feel pretty refreshed by the end. Then I watched Mad Max. I always knew this would obviously be vastly different from where Mad Max is at these days, but I didn't know it would be this different, borderline unrecognizable, which is not to say it's bad at all. The action in here, even for the time, is extremely good. Some absolute batshit stunts that I could not wrap my head around, and in that way, it's not too far off from modern day Mad Max stuff. My one pretty sizable gripe with it, though, is the fact that it takes pretty much the entire film for it to really kick into gear. No problem with what it is before the very significant event later in the film, but it also doesn't feel like anything is really happening. But everything after that event is just incredible. It's so good. A very solid watch. I enjoyed it. Then I watched Mad Max 2. Now this is something special. This is seriously dangerously close to being on par with Fury Road in my opinion. Who knows where it'll sit on a rewatch. The action, I think we've established that already. It's great. The costumes, somehow the weirdest they've ever been in the franchise. So interesting and colorful and bizarre. I haven't seen Thunderdome yet, but I'd argue this is my favorite iteration of the Max character. It's involved just enough in the central plot, not completely irrelevant, but also not stretching his limits, and it just looks good. The moving image moves incredibly well in this movie. When I was a kid, I was super into that one car chase scene from Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was like my entire personality for a period of time, and there's no way in hell my parents would have ever let me watch this, but if I had seen this as a kid, I would have been so annoying about this all the time. It's so cool. It's just so damn cool. Then I rewatched What Did Jack Do? I'll be honest, I never thought I'd rewatch this bizarre little David Lynch short about him interrogating a monkey who's suspected of murder, but look at where Monkey Mondays gets ya. Yes, there are some questionable choices here. I don't love the old movie filter or the artificial spotlight effects during the musical number, but listen to what I'm saying. There's a goddamn musical number. It's an incredible short film. Then I rewatched Furiosa. What more is there to say? The movies are back. Once again, I'm tired of talking about Mad Max. I have a whole video on this. Just go watch that. And then I finished the month with a rewatch of The Swimmer. This is one of many films I plowed through in the thick of the pandemic, and it's really stuck with me over the years. I have yet to see anything like this movie. It has a one-of-a-kind tone that is both surreal, hilarious, and deeply upsetting. The concept of a man jumping through pools shouldn't be able to carry a feature like this, but the more you learn about him, the more devastating the backstory is. What was once a funny little idea turns into something more urgent, a way of survival. I kind of dove into a lot of absurdist filmmaking this month. Holy Motors, Kinds of Kindness, What Did Jack Do? And this is the strongest example of that style of filmmaking, which therefore makes it the hardest to put into words. All I'm saying is, if you want to see one of the most upsetting critiques on class in America that happens to feature over 90 minutes of shirtless Burt Lancaster delivering an incredible performance, check this one out. And hey, that's what I watched this month. What a month. Thanks for watching. Go watch these films and form your own opinions. And if you're looking for something to watch next month, you should check out this week's sponsor, Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming service, a place to watch beautiful, interesting, and incredible cinema. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there's always something new to discover. With Mubi, each and every film is hand-selected by its team of curators. Discover the best of cinema at your fingertips, streaming anytime, anywhere. Actually, one of the movies I watched this month, Smoke Sauna Sisterhood, was something I found on Mubi, and it's a movie, to be honest, I probably never would have checked out or even heard of if not for Mubi. And boy am I glad I watched it, because it was one of my favorite things I watched this month. You can try Mubi free for 30 days at mubi.com/Karsten. That's mubi.com/Karsten for a whole month of amazing cinema for free.